Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we are taking a really close look at one of the most powerful gatekeepers in the modern job market.
That's right, the applicant tracking system, or ATS.
Exactly. And we're not just talking about them in general. We're doing a deep forensic audit of a huge market leader in Brazil, a platform called Guppy.
And this isn't just, a simple software review. We've pulled together a massive body of evidence here. I'm talking about a convergence of 44 different sources.
44.
Yeah. We've got academic audits, binding rulings from labor justice courts, internal risk assessments, and literally thousands of user testimonies.
And they all point to the same thing.
They all point to one really devastating conclusion, that this operational model is and I'm quoting here, a multidimensional strategic liability for any company that uses it.
A multidimensional strategic liability. That's a heavy phrase.
It is. And it's also a source of, profound social injustice for the 46 million candidates who are in its system.
We really need to nail down the scale here right away. This isn't some small startup.
No, not at all. This company basically consolidated the market. They acquired their main competitor, Kenobi, and now they hold something like a 25% market share.
And the investment, that's what's really staggering.
It is. In 2022, they received one of the largest investment rounds in Latin American HR tech history, a massive $500 million.
Which is, well over $100 million US? That's some serious corporate gravity.
It is. And that level of investment and market dominance, it makes their performance a systemic issue. We're talking about a system that manages data for an estimated 46 million registered candidates.
Just in Brazil.
Just in Brazil. So our mission today is really to cut through all the marketing hype and use the hard data from the UFRJ studies, the court cases, consumer complaints, to really understand why a tool that's sold as the peak of efficiency is, in reality, structurally broken.
Okay, so let's start there. Let's unpack that tension between what was promised and what's actually happening, starting with just the raw technical failures.
Sounds good.
So the sales pitch for any AI-powered ATS is pretty simple, right? It's speed, it's volume, and it's accuracy. Guppy's own marketing, it boasts these incredible metrics, things like 75% assertivity and huge reductions in the time it takes to hire someone.
It's a very compelling pitch. If you're an HR exec dealing with thousands of applications, that sounds like a lifesaver.
Absolutely, the holy grail.
But when independent researchers dig past those self-reported numbers and actually crunch the outcome data, the picture is starkly different.
How different are we talking?
Our sources document a true conversion rate, and by that I mean from the moment an application is submitted to an actual job offer being accepted of consistently less than 1%.
Wait a second. Less than 1%. From applicant to hire.
Less than 1%.
That's not efficiency. That's an industrial-scale rejection machine.
That's exactly it. The disparity just proves that whatever speed the platform has, it's purely in the efficiency of rejection, or what the system calls Descartes. It's not in the quality of selection. If you're spending 500 million rados to build a product that rejects 99% of your potential talent pool, you really have to ask how that machine is working.
And the machine here is the algorithm, the AI named Gaia.
Mm-hmm.
If it's failing that badly, what is the core malfunction? It's supposed to be artificial intelligence, but what kind of AI is it really?
Well, the technical analysis shows this profound disconnect. The AI, Gaia, it's not based on advanced AI at all. It's rooted in these, outdated methodologies called information retrieval, or IR.
IR. Okay, so for anyone listening, what's the difference? We hear AI and we think of, these complex language models that get nuance. What's an IR system?
It's a great question. A modern semantic AI something using, say, advanced natural language processing, it tries to understand the meaning behind your words. So if your resume says you manage the entire software development lifecycle, a semantic system gets that. It understands that's a high-level project management skill. An information retrieval system, it doesn't do that. It's primitive. It's essentially running a very, very sophisticated version of Sutral plus F across millions of CVs.
So it's just matching words.
Exactly. It's checking for the exact lexical match. If the job description wants a Java developer, and your resume says you're a developer specializing in the JVM ecosystem, the primitive AI might score you low just because the exact phrase Java developer isn't there. It has no concept of synonyms or context or, qualitative human experience.
And that explains right away why real professionals who naturally use nuanced language to describe what they do are just getting filtered out from the jump.
Precisely. And we have hard data to prove how catastrophic this failure is. It comes from internal audits done by, very diligent human recruiters.
What did they find?
The sources show that when recruiters take the time to manually audit candidates ranked low by the system, we're talking profiles buried on page 5 or 6, below position 50, they frequently find people who are objectively superior to the candidates the AI ranked in the top 10.
That is the literal definition of a false negative.
Yeah.
A good candidate gets rejected by mistake. But this is happening at an industrial scale.
It is, and that discovery it completely annihilates the entire business case for the software.
How so?
Well, think about it. If your human recruiter has to spend hours digging through the system's trash pile to find the best person because the AI is too dumb to put them on page 1, then the entire reason you bought the software to save time is gone.
You're actually paying a vendor to create more manual work for your team.
Exactly. You're paying for the problem.
Okay, so this is where the rigidity of the system goes beyond just being inefficient, and it creates something the sources call a fraud ecosystem.
Yes, because when a system is this predictable in its flaws, people will figure out how to game it.
It's a classic case of perverse incentives.
Right. If the only barrier is a keyword checker, then the smartest thing to do is just manipulate the keywords. And we found a whole shadow economy around this. There are YouTube tutorials with thousands of views, forums, all dedicated to teaching people hacks to guarantee a top ranking.
And let's get into the most famous technique, the one that really shows how broken this is.
Uh-huh.
The keyword stuffing vulnerability. You said it was almost laughably simple.
It is. It exploits the fact that the system's text parser is primitive. It can't tell the difference between text you can see and text you can't.
So what do?
The candidate copies the entire text of the job description. I mean, every single required skill, every technology, every preferred trait like must know Java, AWS, Docker, Scrum, and have fluent English. They take all of that.
And they paste it into their resume.
Right, usually in a discreet spot like the footer.
But then how do they hide it from the human recruiter who eventually looks at the document?
This is the genius of it. They just format the text using the most basic camouflage imaginable. White font, size 1.
White font on a white background.
Exactly. To the human eye looking at the PDF, it's completely invisible. But the Guppy parser, which just reads the raw text layer of the file, sees every single one of those keywords.
So the algorithm sees a resume that contains 100% of the required words, gives it a perfect score, and that person, even with zero real experience, shoots to the top of the list.
That's the hack, and it perfectly illustrates the vulnerability. But the strategic consequence for the companies using this is devastating.
Of course, because their expensive automated system isn't selecting the most competent professionals.
It's selecting the best CV SEO hackers. And then the company wastes countless hours of their recruiters' time interviewing people who basically just know how to commit document fraud, which leads directly to costly bad hires.
I just have to pause on that. A piece of technology that got a $500 million investment is defeated by a strategy that is the digital equivalent of writing cheat codes on your palm in invisible ink.
It's a kindergarten-level hack.
And that failure alone feels like it should be enough to abandon the whole system. But this is just part one. The technical failure is almost the least of its problems.
Right. Now we have to pivot to the part that has much bigger social and legal ramifications.
Algorithmic bias and discrimination. This is where it moves from just being bad software to something much more dangerous.
Absolutely. And the most critical piece of evidence here comes from a really intense academic study, a master's dissertation from the Federal University of Rio de Janeiro, UFRJ, called Infiltrado na Guppy.
Infiltrated in Guppy.
Yes, and their findings were, well, they weren't subtle. They concluded that the platform not only does not prevent biases, but potentializes them.
It potentializes them.
Yeah.
So it makes discrimination actively worse, all while hiding behind this mask of objective automation. That's a chilling idea.
It is. And the way it happens is rooted in a fundamental flaw of how machine learning works in these contexts. The systems are designed to learn from historical hiring data.
They're trained on the past.
Exactly. The algorithm looks at what the company has defined as success over the last, say, 5 or 10 years. So let's walk through an example.
Please.
If a company has a history of hiring, let's say, predominantly white men who went to one of 3 specific elite universities, the algorithm looks at that data and identifies those characteristics, white, male, elite university, as factors of success.
So it codifies past, maybe even unconscious, human bias into cold, hard math.
That's it perfectly. The AI isn't born biased. It's just a very efficient mirror. It reflects the biases of the organization that fed it the data. And then the system just automatically re-ranks down any candidate who deviates from that established, homogeneous, successful profile.
So the company thinks they've bought an objective robot, but what they've actually bought is a machine for systematically replicating their own past prejudices. It just perpetuates corporate homogeneity at scale.
And it enforces that homogeneity using proxies. The system knows it can't use protected characteristics directly, like race or gender, so it uses other data points that stand in for them.
Let's talk about those. The sources point to 3 big examples of this discrimination by proxy. Start with ageism or eterism.
This is a huge one. The documents show the algorithm uses some very subtle but powerful proxies for age. The most blatant one they found was an explicit screening criteria based on time since graduation.
Time since graduation.
Yes. So if you graduated 25 years ago, even if you are a world-class expert in your field, the system can flag you negatively because its training data suggests that more recent graduates are somehow better.
Wow. In Brazil, where something like 78% of companies admit they practice ageism and the workforce is getting older, that's a huge problem.
It's a massive problem. It means an engineer who maybe took a career gap or just has a long, rich professional history gets automatically penalized, not for a lack of skill, but for the crime of having experience.
Okay, what about academic classism? Does the name of your university really matter to a piece of code?
It matters deeply. It acts as a major socioeconomic filter. Like we said, the training data often favors candidates from these high-prestige institutions, federal universities, elite private colleges.
So for a candidate who went to a less-known college, maybe because it was what they could afford or what was available regionally.
For them, the university's name becomes an exclusion keyword. The algorithm is effectively saying, you might be brilliant, you might have all the right skills, but you don't fit the pattern of success we learned from historical data.
It's judging your access, not your aptitude.
Precisely. And it creates these barriers that just perpetuate class divides.
We've seen this before, right?
Yeah.
The famous case with Amazon's AI being biased against women in tech roles. Is there evidence of that here?
The sources suggest patterns that are very consistent with gender bias, especially in fields like tech, where historical hiring was male-dominated. The system doesn't need to see the word female or male.
It uses proxies again.
Exactly. It can use proxies like certain names, or it can detect career gaps, which statistically are more often linked to maternity leave. Even if those gaps aren't labeled, the model sees them as a deviation from the successful male career path it was trained on, and it ranks the candidate lower.
So it's not programmed to be sexist, but it ends up producing a sexist outcome.
Yes. One report from Internet Lab summarized it perfectly. They said these systems, though not programmed to differentiate gender, ended up not approving women in their selections. It just learned what a past successful hire looked like, which is usually a man, and replicated it.
Beyond these historical biases, the platform itself creates new barriers. Let's talk about measurement bias, how the tech excludes people based on their access to resources.
This is such a critical and overlooked point. The system relies heavily on things like timed psychometric tests, logic puzzles, and mandatory video interviews.
All of which require good infrastructure.
Right. You need stable, high-speed internet, you need a quiet place to work, you need a modern laptop or phone.
Which immediately puts anyone from a low-income background or a rural area at a huge disadvantage.
Absolutely. They get penalized by slow connections, by technical glitches, by time limits. They are being eliminated not because they lack competence, but because they lack a certain level of infrastructure. The platform essentially requires a baseline of privilege to even compete.
And what about cognitive diversity? You mentioned the system forces a standardization of the human mind. What does that mean?
It means the timed logic tests and abstract pattern recognition puzzles. They are known, documented barriers for neurodivergent candidates, people with autism or ADHD, for example.
Okay.
These individuals might have superior, highly focused technical skills that are perfect for the job, but they process information differently, especially under these artificial time constraints. So the platform, by using these one-size-fits-all cognitive tests, actively weeds out valuable cognitive diversity. It's looking for one narrow type of thinker.
So we have a system that's technically broken, easily gamed, and structurally designed to amplify historical inequality. That's a damning indictment before we even get to the human cost.
And the human cost is enormous.
The sources describe it as a catastrophic candidate experience. With 46 million people in the system, the aggregated psychological damage is a national issue. What does the data say about how candidates feel?
The numbers are just startling. We looked at data from Reclaim Aqui, which is a major consumer protection platform in Brazil. We analyzed 9,273 active complaints about this platform.
All right.
The negative sentiment rate was an overwhelming 87%.
87%. How does that compare to, say, other industries?
Well, to give you some context, even for highly criticized sectors, the industry norm for negative sentiment is usually around 70%. So 87% is a clear sign of systemic, widespread, and really profound frustration.
What's the number one complaint? What's driving all that anger?
The top theme, making up 42% of all complaints, is the lack of feedback. It's the ghosting. Candidates spend hours, sometimes days, filling out these long applications, doing arbitrary tests, only to get an impersonal, automated rejection email months later. Or, more often, nothing at all.
And that silence is made worse by another issue, right? The Vegas phantasmas.
Ghost jobs, yes. Web scraping analysis suggests that over 30% of the job openings posted are phantom vacancies.
30%.
Yeah. These are jobs that stay open for months, sometimes over a year, with absolutely no intention of hiring anyone.
So what's the point?
The only point is to perpetually collect candidate data for the company's talent bank. It creates what the sources call false hopes and just wastes people's time.
This goes way beyond just being inefficient. It feels like it's causing documented psychological harm. Being constantly rejected by an opaque machine must be terrible for your self-esteem.
It is. The psychological toll is one of the most serious findings here. Testimonies consistently describe the experience as a source of frustration, anxiety, depression, and low self-esteem.
People start to internalize it.
They do. The individual internalizes this unexplained, automated rejection from a supposedly objective AI as a measure of their own professional worth. They think, I must be worthless if a machine can't even find me qualified. But the reality is they're just fighting a broken system that rewards fraud over skill. That sense of injustice is just crippling for people.
Let's make that frustration really concrete with some of the case studies you found. We have to hear about the absurdities this system creates. First, the case of the really persistent applicant.
Right. We have a documented case of a candidate who, either out of sheer desperation or just commitment, applied for 96 different jobs through the platform.
96.
And he received 96 identical, immediate, automated rejection emails. That volume of automated rejection, regardless of how his qualifications might have varied, it just confirms the system is an indiscriminate firewall. It's not a filter. It is designed to say no as fast as possible.
The machine gives the same answer to 96 different questions. But the next case, the one with the two sisters, that one is mind-blowing. It really exposes how meaningless the internal tests are.
This is a perfect forensic case. A highly qualified developer applied for a tech role. She meticulously completed all the complex psychometric and logic tests, did everything by the book.
And she was rejected.
Immediately rejected. So she decided to run an experiment.
What did she do?
She had her sister, who had a nearly identical professional profile on paper, submit the exact same application.
Yeah.
But, and this is the crucial part, the sister intentionally provided random, generic answers to all the internal tests, just clicking through, putting in stuff that was obviously wrong.
And the sister who deliberately failed the tests.
The sister was approved and moved on to the next stage.
You're kidding me. So the system ranked the person who failed as a better candidate than the one who tried.
Exactly. The developer later asked, how was a profile that didn't fill out any test correctly considered apt while my diligent submission was rejected? It confirms two things. First, the tests have no real predictive validity for job performance.
And second,
the AI's ranking is just deeply arbitrary. It might even prioritize people who just click through the tests quickly, regardless of whether the answers are right.
And then there's the final case, the one that proved the AI was actively hiding the best talent from the company.
Yes. This involved a highly qualified professional who was, of course, rejected by the ATS. But later, a human recruiter found them through a different channel like LinkedIn or a referral and hired them.
So they got the job.
They got the job. And after it was all done, the recruiter, just out of curiosity, went back into the ATS to look at that specific job opening.
And where was this new star employee ranked by the AI?
They found that this highly qualified person they had just hired was ranked all the way down at 17th by the platform.
17th. That's hard proof that the AI is making huge errors and actively preventing companies from finding the best people.
It is. And when you put all of this together, the fraud, the ghosting, the psychological damage, the errors, you get what the historians call the adverse selection phenomenon.
The ultimate self-inflicted wound for companies.
Right. It creates this dangerous reverse filter. Senior, highly qualified professionals in these specialized online communities, tech forums, finance groups, they've started actively boycotting the system. The advice is blunt. If the link is guppy, don't click.
So the best people just opt out entirely.
They value their time and their mental health too much to subject themselves to a known black box of arbitrary rejection, which means the platform becomes radioactive to the professional elite.
And the companies are left with who?
They're left attracting candidates from two main groups: the desperate juniors, who have no choice but to apply everywhere, and the manipulators who've mastered the keyword stuffing hack.
So the system selects for the best hackers, while the best professionals go to your competitors.
Precisely. And this has fueled what's now called the anti-guppy movement. There are organized boycotts, public GitHub repositories listing companies that don't use the platform. And not using it is now seen as a major competitive advantage for a company's employer brand.
Wow. So using this tech is actually becoming a sign of corporate dysfunction.
That's what the best talent thinks.
Okay. If the first three parts were about operational and reputational self-sabotage, part 4 is where we hit the existential threat, the legal minefield. The sources call this a high-voltage legal liability.
The risk really stems from Brazil's data protection law, the LGPD. The platform, often under the guise of a diversity census, it encourages the collection of an excessive amount of very sensitive data.
What kind of data are we talking about?
Things like religion, political orientation, sexual orientation, all at the earliest stage of the application process.
And why is collecting that data at the screening stage a legal problem?
Because it violates the core LGPD principles of necessity and adequacy. Simply put, you don't need to know someone's religion or political views to decide if they're a good fit for, say, an accounting job.
Right.
And while the platform says these questions are optional, there's a huge power imbalance. Candidates feel coerced. They're afraid the opaque algorithm will penalize them if they don't answer, so they hand over sensitive data that isn't legally required.
Which makes the hiring company solidarily responsible, right?
Yeah.
They are jointly liable for what their vendor does.
Correct. You can't just blame the platform. You chose the tool, you're responsible for its compliance. And that responsibility is made so much worse by the black box problem, which directly clashes with LGPD Article 20.
Article 20 is the one that gives candidates rights. What does it guarantee?
It gives a candidate the clear right to request a human review of any decision made solely by an automated system, like an AI rejection. And crucially, they can demand a comprehensible explanation of the criteria used to make that decision.
But the system is an opaque black box. It uses over 150 different criteria. So if a company gets challenged in court, what can they possibly say?
Their defense basically doesn't exist. If a judge asks, why was this candidate rejected? The company can't reverse engineer the AI's decision. They can't explain how those 150 weighted criteria interacted.
This is what the legal sources call technical indefensibility.
Exactly. They're forced to just shrug and say, the robot did it, which is not a credible legal defense, especially when you have all this evidence of systemic bias.
And this isn't just a theory. The courts in Brazil have already ruled against companies for this kind of thing.
Yes, the precedent is already set. And beyond data privacy, there's another really powerful legal doctrine coming into play here. It's called perda de uma chance.
The loss of a chance doctrine.
Yeah.
How does that apply to getting rejected by an algorithm?
Well, the doctrine applies when some illicit act removes a real serious opportunity for someone to gain an advantage. The best analogy is a race. It's like if a race official tripped the fastest runner just before they got to the starting line.
Okay.
The runner didn't lose the race, they lost the chance to compete fairly, and that loss is actionable.
So when the algorithm wrongly eliminates a qualified candidate because of a keyword error or bias, it's like tripping them before the race even starts.
That's the argument. It's an illicit act that removed their tangible opportunity to compete for the job. And that opens the door to lawsuits for both material and moral damages.
This sounds like the legal system is finally catching up to opaque AI. What's the future regulation look like?
The pressure is ramping up fast.
Yeah.
There's pending legislation, the PL 2338-2023, which is Brazil's big AI legal framework. And it's expected to classify recruitment AI systems as high risk.
And if that passes, what happens?
The consequences would be immediate and severe. High-risk systems would be subject to mandatory external audits. They'd have to be completely transparent about their criteria. And if they keep operating as a black box, they could face catastrophic financial penalties up to $50 million per violation.
So the legal risk of using a system like this is about to just skyrocket.
An era of saying the algorithm did it is coming to a very swift end.
Okay, so this entire deep dive has laid out this clear pattern of failure. It fails on technology, on fairness, on reputation, and on the law. What's the final strategic verdict for a company that's using this kind of system right now?
I think we have to anchor the verdict in the financial argument, in the negative return on investment. Companies have to see that the initial savings they thought they were getting from automation are just an illusion,
Because they're wiped out by all the hidden costs.
completely swallowed by them. You've got the high cost of the software license itself. You've got the wasted hours of your recruiters interviewing the SEO hackers. You've got the massive cost of high turnover from bad hires. And then you have the accumulating legal and reputational liabilities we just covered. The math just doesn't work.
So the efficiency argument is bankrupt.
Utterly. The convergent evidence from every angle, academic, legal, social, it all confirms this system is structurally flawed. It's optimized for rejection, for Descartes, not for talent. And that makes it, frankly, inapta for corporate use, especially for any role where the cost of a bad hire is really high.
So if you're a company listening to this right now and you use a black box ATS, what are the urgent recommendations? How do you stop the bleeding?
First, the big strategic shift. You have to stop using the platform as your main screening gatekeeper, especially for anything beyond entry-level roles. Second, if you have to use an automated system, you need to migrate immediately to what we call a glass box solution.
A glass box system, meaning one that's transparent.
Yes, a system that gives you, the human, full control and transparency over the filtering rules. It lets you explain, in plain English, why a candidate was disqualified. That's how you satisfy the requirements of LGPD Article 20.
And if you can't switch overnight, what are the tactical steps you need to take right now?
You have to enforce a new internal policy. Never trust the AI ranking blindly. Your recruiting team must be required to manually review candidates who are ranked low or automatically thrown out. They have to actively dig for talent outside the top 10. And finally, you have to implement mandatory, independent, external fairness audits, not internal ones. You need someone from the outside to check for those biased proxies.
Okay, that's the prescription for companies. Now, let's pivot to the individual listener, the candidate who is facing this every single day. What's the empowerment guide for them? How do you survive this?
The first step, and it's the most important, is psychological. It's mental reframing.
What do you mean by that?
You have to internalize, you have to truly understand that the constant automated rejections and the sub 1% conversion rate, that is the fault of a flawed, arbitrary system. It is not a reflection of your personal value or your professional competence.
It's not you, it's the machine.
It's the machine. You're battling a technical glitch that rewards manipulation. You're not proving you're inadequate. That reframing is essential for your mental health.
Okay, so since we know the AI is just looking for keywords, how can we ethically optimize a resume to get past it without, doing the white font fraud?
We advocate for something called keyword espellamento, or language mirroring. It's ethical optimization.
How does it work?
You carefully read the job description and you identify the exact language they use. If you have Scrum leadership experience, but the job asks for Agile project management, you have to add the phrase Agile project management to your resume in a visible, normal font.
So you're just translating your skills into the AI's dialect.
Exactly. You're making your real skills understandable to a primitive AI. That's ethical. The keyword stuffing is just fraud.
We also talked about how the LGPD gives candidates legal rights. How can an individual actually use that law to fight back?
You have to know your rights under Article 20. If you get automatically rejected for a job you know you are perfectly qualified for, you have the right to send a formal request to the company.
A request for what?
A request demanding a comprehensible, non-technical explanation for why you were rejected, and a formal request for a human to review that decision. Now, some companies might make this process difficult, but documenting these requests is so important. It puts pressure on them to comply with the law, and it creates a paper trail if you ever decide to pursue a legal challenge for loss of a chance.
And finally, since we know that just spamming applications into these systems is inefficient and damaging, what's the strategic advice for actually getting a job?
We strongly recommend the 70-20-10 strategy. It's based on what we know has the highest conversion rates.
Break it down for us.
You should dedicate 70% of your time and energy to networking, referrals, and internal introductions. That's where conversion rates are highest, sometimes 10 to 17%. Then, dedicate 20% of your time to selective, direct applications to companies you really want to work for.
Or man, the final 10%.
Only 10% of your time should go to high-volume cold applications through these black box platforms. They offer the lowest conversion rate of any method. Stop feeding the machine your valuable time and redirect that energy toward actual human connection.
So this deep dive started with a massive $500 million investment. And the tragedy we've uncovered is, well, it's profoundly socio-technical. The pressure for that investor-driven growth pushed this product toward being optimized for volume and speed of rejection, not for quality or fairness.
And that priority, in turn, has amplified social inequality, created these huge legal vulnerabilities, and inflicted documented psychological harm on the lives of 46 million Brazilians. The evidence from every angle is just irrefutable. These opaque black box systems are structurally inappropriate for modern HR.
The analysis really shows that systems like this trade genuine talent acquisition, which is a company's true competitive advantage, for a false sense of operational convenience. And in the end, it just damages the company's reputation and profitability. So here's a final provocative thought for you, our listener, to take away from all this.
The essential question for any organization using an opaque AI recruiter, or for any professional who has to deal with them, is very simple. Are you prioritizing the speed of rejecting 99% of applicants over the quality and the diversity of the single human being you eventually hire? The structural failure of the black box ATS is a systemic, costly, and global call for a return to transparent, accountable, and human-centric hiring.